Hi everyone, I'm Tracy Mode. So today I'm going to start this little video off with a quote. I am one who loves quotes. I like to add text to a lot of my paintings, so I'll often go Google search something that pertains to my subject matter. So today I want to paint a little easy elephant, and I wanted to grab a quote because elephants are seemingly a very popular subject matter, and there's a good reason why. They're so amazing. They're such an amazing animal. So here's a quote, and I hope I pronounce the guy's name right at the end of this, but if I don't, please forgive me. So here we go. There is a mystery behind that masked gray visage and ancient life force, delicate and mighty, awesome and enchanted. It gives me goosebumps. Commanding the silence ordinarily reserved for mountain peaks, great fires, and the sea. That's a quote by Peter Matthiessen. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. I'll just put it down in the description. I'll write this quote down there as well. But doesn't that just say it all? The visage, it's an ancient visage. It's delicate, yet it's so mighty. It commands strength and awesome. It's enchanted, commanding the silence. And who hasn't stood in awe looking at a mountain peak, just how awesome and huge it is, or standing on the edge of the ocean when the waves are pounding. I remember standing in on the edge of the ocean in Poipu Bay and watching the waves, the power that's in them. And I think that's what it is about the elephant. They're so powerful and beautiful. And so I'm going to paint one today, and I'm going to take you through it. It is not a hard project, but I want to show you just how I got to the image and that I'm going to paint. So let's take a look at the project we're working on today, and get your paints ready, get your paper ready, and brushes. Yes, brushes. And let's get started with this. So the first thing I did when starting this project of an elephant was I found a photo that a friend of mine had from a safari they went on, and I just went ahead and sketched. I've got a sketchbook here. I sketched out, whoops, I do some value sketches, but I won't show you those right now. So I sketched out my elephant, and value sketches are very important. I like doing a value sketch and working from the value sketch more than ever before. I had normally worked from a color photograph, and now with the value sketch, I'm not so caught up in the color. I'm more focused on the values and getting those right. So this is my initial drawing. And then what I did was I got a piece of, this is just computer paper, and put this over the top of it. I have a light box that I use, which makes it really easy. I just tape the two together so they don't slide around. But you can also use a bright window. So I would just tear out this sketch, tape it onto a window over the top of my outline here. So I've got a perfect little outline, and then I did the same thing to get it transferred onto my paper here. Same thing, I taped my outline to my sketch, or to my light box, excuse me, and put my watercolor paper over the top of it. And you can see that image right through the paper. So you can get a perfect outline very easily. But what I want to do is make sure I'm looking at my value sketch, because I then have an idea of where I want my lights and darks to be. So also what I've done with this one, when I have done it before, is outline it in marker. So this is a micron number 8, and it's black. So I'm just going to go ahead and outline my little elephant here. And one thing that the outline does, I found, is it kind of takes away the hesitation that seems to come when starting a painting. It's like the white of the paper, you're afraid that you're going to ruin it. Well, I've just put marker over it, and that kind of takes the pressure off. I don't know why that is, but all of a sudden it just seems like no big deal to add the paint. So we're just going to sketch around that. And also something about the pen, it's like it's not perfect it doesn't have to be perfect. This isn't meant to be a realistic looking elephant. This is going to be a fun, colorful-ish. I am going to add color to it, but I think with this particular painting, I want to try out more of my Daniel Smith Primatek colors. There's some really fun granulating colors in that line, and I think that'll be fun and add some texture to my elephant. So when I was drawing that sketch, I was just wanting to indicate, I didn't draw every single wrinkle on this elephant, but I did add enough to give the impression that his trunk had wrinkles on it. And I also paid attention to the shape of that trunk. So there's a little perspective at play in that. And I'm working on Hanamule. I have a lot of that right now in my studio. I ordered a whole pack of it, so I've got a lot of that. And it actually has, it's a cold press, so it's a smoother surface, and this pen doesn't get hung up on all the grooves that a rough paper might have, or does have. Okay, so we have our lines all drawn in, and I'm going to open my sketchbook back up to my elephant. Where is he? There he is. And I've got my paper towels ready. For this little painting, I want to tape it down. Basically, I like taping it down because it doesn't slide around when I'm working on it, and it does keep it from buckling a little bit. All right. Okay, first thing I want to do, I've got clear water, and I've got my paints all moistened on my palette, is decide which brush I want to use. These are Alvaro Castanet's Signature Collection, Escoda Prado. I might go with my number, let's see, this is a number 8. I think I'll go with that one. So I'll mix up several colors. I have, like I said, I'm using the Primatek for the most part, and I also have Daniel Smith Perline, I believe it's pronounced. And some of these other colors I'll list in the description below. Pimonite, Sodalite, Bronzite, an Amethyst Genuine, Bloodstone. There's several of them, but I like the colors of them. So I think this is going to be kind of a brown themed elephant. And there's my amethyst. I'm going to add some of that. And then I also want to pick up a little Rhodonite, and that's kind of in that pink. We're going to do a pink elephant. Let's see. I should have had this dug out before, but I cleaned up my studio. I think that's it right there. Yes. And that's one thing that I'm really kind of picky about when I'm done for the day. I like to leave my room, my studio, clean and organized, so when I come back in the next day, I'm not facing a mess. All right, so let's look at the values. I'm going to start on this ear and just add clear water around the outside of this guy's ear, maybe a little bit. This is going to be lighter area inside, so I want to keep my paint to the edges and just let it flow around and soften as it comes to the center there. Okay, so I'm going to tip this up a little bit. I also want to grab, I really like this pink, and that's a Winsor & Newton color. Get my soda light as well. And I'm just going to plop in some of my colors, just randomly charging in those colors, letting them flow where they may. I'm not trying to control, and I don't even care if it splashes. That's fine, because I'm going to get some splatters in there a little bit later. Wherever the water is, the paint's going to go. So as I tip the board up, it stops where the dry paper is. So I'm just going to kind of lift out a little bit of that and come around here, rinse my brush, dab off the extra moisture, and soften that a bit. So far, I like what's happening. I like that amethyst. So I think I'll add some more of that up here. Soak up a little of the excess water up there with a thirsty brush. And then I'm just gonna let that dry. We'll come over here to the other ear while it's drying. I'm just softening that a little bit again with a thirsty brush. And this is, I think I'll drop in a little bit of this Pemanite in here. Just a little bit here and there. Up in here. And a little bit of soda light up in here as well. Look at how that just flows. It's very beautiful. I feel like that's a little bit dark, so I'm just going to soak it up. It will dry a little bit lighter, so I'm not too super worried about it. All right, so let's come on to this other ear. And there's not as much light hitting this one, so most of this is going to be mid-tone. Isn't that beautiful? Oh my goodness, it's so pretty. I just discovered these granulating Daniel Smith colors, and they are really super fun for adding texture. One thing I do here when I'm just adding water, like I am to charge in color, is I tip it so I can see the reflection from the light, so I can tell where my water is and how moist, wet, or damp it is. Sometimes it starts to dry out and I want to add a little bit more water to it, so as is the case up here, just a tiny bit. I want my water to be having a little bit of sheen on the paper so that paint flows into it. Okay, so let's get started with this. And this little area here is going to be a darker, that's Pemanite with a little bit of soda light mixed in. And a little bit darker here. If I start feeling like there's too much water on my paper, I'm just going to get my brush, dry that off a bit, and soak up some of the excess. And some of that bronzite again. I like that. Some of the pink, keep that consistent. Really like the way this is looking so far. A little more of the sodalite up there. That one seems to have a lot of granulation. The amethyst has a lot of shimmer in it. It's got some fun shimmer, as does the bronzite. Come over here real quick and soften that up. Add a little amethyst in there. And then again, here's a thirsty brush. I'm just coming along those edges and softening. And then coming right to the edge here. Super fun way to paint. So letting the paint do the work, and the gravity, moving the paper around also helps that a great deal. So and I think this side is good. We can add some darker details when this paint dries, but for right now, we're at a good spot. So I think here is safe to come down with some water, working around the tusk. And if these two bleed into each other a little bit, that's okay. This area is going to be darker. I'm not worried about it, but I am going to keep this area through the knee a little bit lighter. So there we go, just dropping that in. And as you can see, I'm up on the ferrule. I'm holding it closer to the ferrule right at this time. And that's because I'm coming into a little bit more detail. When I want to be looser, I hold it down on the handle further. So this is kind of a little bit of a mid point. I love how that's flowing in and just flowing very softly and gently down. So again, I'm going to continue that water down, stay away from the little toenails there. And I think that's, I'm not sure what that color is right there, but it looks like it should go right down on my little elephant's foot. More amethyst. Now don't think you have to stick to the colors I'm using. Feel completely free and branch out, experiment if you're new to watercolor painting. Don't be afraid to experiment, because that is how you're going to grow. You don't grow by hesitating and being afraid of the paint and the paper. You grow by experimenting and time, you know, taking the time to do this. And it's not hard. I mean, it's not like a job where you have to go to work, and this is a fun, meditative. It's good for your mental health. All right, so I love this. I absolutely love where this has gone. So this side, I'm gonna add, actually I wanna pick up a little of that before it dries. Just so it's a tiny bit lighter. This side is going to be dark. So what I think I'll do over here is, again, adding that water to begin with, staying away from the tusk, not worrying if those colors are bleeding together, and then adding Amethyst, and I'm going to add the Sodalite to that on the palette. And then just drop that color in and let it flow. And if I tip it up a little bit, it won't flow as much into that ear. It'll flow downward. Let the gravity take it. And then I put a little Peamonite in there. Let's see, what else can I grab? I think I have some bloodstone in there. And this one, I'm not sure, but again, I'll list that's hematite. This one is bloodstone. But they're all in that brown color. Okay, so then I think I'm going to get a little thicker on my paint. So when there's lots of water on the paper and you put a really wet mixture of paint into it, it's going to just dilute. So I'm adding paint to a wet wash. I thickened up the mixture of paint that I'm adding to it. So it's not going to spread out and dilute as much. And that's the way I'm getting the darker value there. Okay. So now we need to let this dry so we can come back in. As I say that, I'm going to add a little bit more pink over here, just to give that some interest and a little bit of difference between the leg. Okay, so we need to let this dry before taking the next step. I don't want to put my hand in the paint or bleed any of the paint that's in the ears onto here. This is a little too damp. If I started putting wet next to it, it's going to blossom, have blossoms go into that ear, and I don't want that to happen. I want it to stay as it is. So let's let this dry and come back and take the next step. This is completely dry, and I'm going to bring this up and kind of tip it around so maybe you can see the granulation that's happened. I can see shimmer from the bronzite up in here. I'm not sure that you can even see that on camera, but it's really cool. I really, really like this granulating look. So now we're going to work on the areas that are more in the light. I mean, you've got more surface areas, so this area is going to be a little bit lighter, but we're going to use the same approach and just start off. I'm going to start off up in here with a wet water again. This time I'm going to focus on the little shadows here, and then we'll work our way down into the eye area. I'll probably go with the smaller brush in that. So I'm using, again, whatever that, I think that was maybe Mars Yellow or Raw Sienna. So I'm just dropping in a little of that. And there's some more amethyst along with the Sodalite mixed in. I like how that, oh my gosh, look at how those two together are beautiful combination. The Amethyst Genuine and the Sodalite. They're so pretty together. I think I'll add a little of that Peamonite in there. And then I'm going to just use a damp brush. I like the edge there, so I don't want to take that entirely away, but I do want to soften out some of that and kind of bring it down a little bit. Same with this side. A little bit more of the goldy color. And as I come down here, I am going to come along this middle part, which is kind of dipped down in an elephant's trunk, and then the sides are a little bit, it's a little bit of a square-ish shape. So I'm going to add more shadowing on the sides. And here, I'm just going to add a little bit in that center. And soften it out as well. I don't want to get it too dark because I want it to stand out from those ears. So just a slight hint of shadow there. A bit. I'm not getting this too terribly wet, but I do want, I like that amethyst and the sodalite, so I'm going to just go with those two colors, and leaving a little light edge there too is going to help that to stand apart from the leg. And so I put a bolder stroke in there of color, and then I can pull it down and spread it out with the water so it dilutes it a little bit. And because there isn't as much water on the paper, the paints aren't spreading as much. I'm a little bit more in control as I come down here. All right, now I do want to come over to this side and add some more water because that was drying out a bit. And there's some of the sodalite, some of that amethyst, a little of that bloodstone genuine, I think that is. So again, I'm leaving a lighter edge so it stands out against the dark leg. I don't want those two blending together, but I do like how they blended here and there. There's no hard edge. I've got a seamless look. So this part of his trunk is going to be light, and then I want to come right around here and follow the shape of his trunk. That gives the illusion of shape. We're creating a three-dimensional object on a two-dimensional surface, so you've got to follow the shape of what you're painting. I don't want to paint straight lines in a round circle. It doesn't work so well. Okay, so that I feel like is complete. We're not going to do anything else to that, but I am going to come in here with a smaller brush and add some darks. So I think I'm going to grab, I've been working with my Escoda Prado Alvaro Castanets set. Now I'm going to go with my long round number 2 from Princeton. It's a Velvet Touch. And working with those same colors, pretty much. I'm going to bring in some other colors as we come in and do some of this background area. So all of this, again, has to be completely dry for me to come in and do that. So we'll have to let that dry. And I'm going to get some of the Pemonite again. And some, actually that's a little watery. I want it to be a pretty thick paint mixture, and then I'm going to use the amethyst with that because that'll give me a nice dark. I might even, which I think I will do as I'm speaking, put some Carbazole Violet in with those two because that is a very rich, deep, dark color. So I'm going to start with this little eyeball. And that was dry paper. And then come along that little line and soften it out a little bit. I'm going to want to put some sodalite in there to get some dark along that edge. And that'll give the illusion that there's depth, that his eye is sitting back. It's at a different level. And I think I do want to add a little bit of brown in there, just to kind of make those two not like they're on a completely different animal. Okay, how about a little bit more of that Sodalite to push the purple back? And just to kind of tiny little touches of brushwork, following some of my lines. And then I'm going to come over here. I do want to leave, it's very important to leave little touches of white here and there in paintings. That you don't have to fill in every single little white of the paper. Leave some sparkle. And the same thing over here, we're going to just leave some whiter areas. That should just about do it for the eyes. I'm going to just kind of drop in a little bit of water next to the paint that's already down and just let it spread by itself. Soak up just a smidge. And that was just a little of that bloodstone, or not bloodstone, bronzite. And I was thinking it might be kind of fun to add some of the gold here. It's not wet though. Just kind of here and there, see what happens. It's not going to do too much, but add shimmer because it's pretty transparent. Unless I put it on there really thick, and then it could show up a little bit more. Okay, so now we need to let this dry a little bit more. I want a little more warm in that area. Bring a little life to it. It's too purple. Okay, so let's let that dry and then we'll come in and do this background area. So this is nice and dry, and I have a couple of puddles mixed up. I went ahead and did Carbazole Violet with burnt orange, and I put some of the Perylene Violet in there. And then on this side, I've got Mayan Blue, that's also Daniel Smith, with Sodalite to darken it up. And then I went with my Pemanite again, just digging into that, trying to get a nice thick mixture because I want this to be one and done. I don't want to come back in to it and mess with it. So I'm rinsing off my brush and we're just going to go for it. So I want to get a nice angle on this and just start with wet right along that edge. And then I'm going to just leave some of it dry so I can come in with some dry brush strokes. And I really like how in the sketch here, there's this indication that there's a little trunk. Well, in the background of the picture that I drew from, there were some elephants behind. So I'm going to attempt to get that look, that there's a crowd behind this guy. You know, they travel in herds. So just real brushy, splashy. I'm gonna add a couple of other colors here and there. Just dropping them in as I go. And I just grabbed a little bit more bronzite there. That looks pretty cool. And then I want to come over here and do the same. And this time, actually, I'm going to start with the soda light and leave a little bit of a light edge there and just come up. Brush is almost too big, but I've heard it said it's better to use a brush that's almost too big than struggle with a brush that's too small. So I'd rather go big. And I'm leaving, again, a little bit of a light edge. So we get that highlight on the elephant's leg. And then I'm just going to drip in some color, getting a little splashy. Which is fun, and just adding water and letting that just kind of flow. I want to put a little shadow under his foot here. We are in Africa, and it's likely to be a little dusty. A little purple, a little soda light. I'm going to push that back up a little bit. And it's okay that it went in his ear. It is okay. And I'm just going to come in a little bit, and then I am going to grab another brush, and I think I just want to soften that a smidge. I'm going to grab my real splattery Escoda Versatil and add some splatters. I don't necessarily want them on there, so I can just quickly dab up. But I do want some of this pink. Just make it fun. And just straight water into there. And I can keep doing that. Actually, I think what I'm going to do here, which would be, this is just an afterthought, another way of adding texture is just a couple of drops of salt. Whoops, that was more than a couple drops. If I do that in the damp areas and not the diluted, it's going to give me just a touch of texture. So just a little bit. And then we'll let that dry and come back and take a look at how it looks. But I also think I want to do just a little bit of Rassiana. All right, let's stop right there and let this dry. It's going to be a little while for that to completely dry with the salt in there. It may not do too much because it's pretty wet over here. Maybe I can soak up a little bit of that with a paper towel. You can do that. There's no rules. And then I think I'll just add a little bit more salt to it. Also, I could splatter some gouache in there after it's dry and get the same, get a couple of speckles of light in there. All right, let's let this dry and come back and take a look at it. And this is, to me, this is finished. I may add some darker in here when it dries, but not until it dries. Because otherwise, if you keep on brushing it, when it's wet like this, it's just going to turn into a muddy mess. So it's always better to let the layer dry. And then if you decide you want it darker, you can come in with another layer over the top of that, and it's much more effective that way. So let's let this dry and we'll come back and take another look. Well, I decided before it dries that I'd like to add some of this gouache. So I've got just a little light mixture, and I'm going to splatter in a few little areas. So it'll spread out a little bit. So let's see what happens with that. May or may not like it. We'll see. Soak up that with my finger. How about that? With my finger. Finger painting was always fun as a child. Okay, so let's let it dry. Well, I added that gouache, and I kind of spread it out a little bit when I was off camera, just a touch while it was still wet. I just kind of moved it around a tiny bit, but I still have the salt in here, so let's see what that looks like. I'm just going to scrape it off with an old credit card. And there is a little bit of texture in there. Show you in a second. So you can just feel along the paper with your hand. Make sure you've got it all off of there. And I'll dump that in the garbage. And you can see a tiny bit of texture. I could have gotten more if the paint was a little bit drier, but again, that's okay. This is a fun little project. So I do want to splatter just a tiny bit more of that gouache. So I've got a little brush here that I like for that reason. It just does littler drops than the brush I used earlier. This is a Holbein. Again, I don't know if you can find these. Holbein doesn't seem to make brushes anymore. So not too much of that, but I just wanted to add a little touch of it. And here is a place where, if you want to, and I'll just show you how, you can lift out some highlights. And I've got a stiff bristle brush. This is a Winsor & Newton No. 2 University Bright. Any stiff bristle, this is flat. It's a good one for lifting out a little bit of highlight. So let's take a look at the elephant. And I think I'll just take out a tiny, tiny bit. I don't want to get carried away with this because I so like what happens, or what happened with the colors in here. But I just maybe think a little bit would be kind of nice. So all I'm doing is getting my brush damp, dabbing off any excess water, and coming along and scrubbing out. And then I'm rinsing that of any color that I might have lifted and bringing it back and lifting more, and then dabbing it out with the dry paper towel. And right here, you can see I still have a line, but maybe I could get a little bit more on the edge of that. I've got my little marker line underneath there too, so I can see that. And I think that helped just make that leg stand out a little bit more. And then if you wanted to, you could come in with a fine fine brush. I've got a number 1 here, number 1 Utrecht, and maybe I want to just make that eyeball a little darker. I can enhance that with a little thicker paint. But all in all, I don't really think I want to do anything else to this except sign my little name to it and call it good. So let's just go ahead and do that. I like using my finer brushes. I don't like a big giant signature, so I stay kind of tiny on my signature, and I try to match up the colors that I've used in the painting. Some people go really bold and big and bright on their signature, but I've just never done that. I always add my little fish. Lets me know where all the good gifts come from. And we will call that done. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and you go out and try this yourself. And if you do go out and try it yourself, don't limit yourself to the colors I used. Experiment with your favorite colors and different combinations. And I think that you will grow as an artist as you experiment with different colors and subject matter. So you guys have a great day. Take care. Keep painting. Keep going. It only gets better. It only gets better.